Hello, this is my first talk today on Tuesday, August the 21st. A little bit disorganised, just got here. It's just rained a little bit on the meadows. I'm going red from standing out here on the meadows. I don't exactly understand why, because it's mainly blowing with the wind and raining. Is it freezer burn? Is that what it is? Anyway, I'm just going to lower this camera a little bit. That's better. That's better. Yeah, so I had a fantastic show last night. I had an actual show in an actual venue, and I talked for about 30-35 minutes. And so what I'm going to use this first talk this morning for, lower myself a little bit more, what I'm going to use this first talk this morning for is to go through that introduction again and then talk about positive ways of seeing. And some of the feedback that I got from earlier viewings of this, when I actually had audience here on the meadows, is that I need more jokes. So as I go through, maybe I'm going to try and think of some jokes, but that's my main task for this afternoon. And it's dawned on me that I don't have to effortlessly weave the jokes in with the subject matter of project management, which is a really daunting thing. I can just, like, for example, if I'm doing a section on the swamp, which I do a section on the swamp. If I do a section on the swamp, I can work in a joke about swamps or bogs or marshes or wetlands. It can be a joke about herons or anaconda. I nearly got a joke about anaconda last night. So that kind of thing. And so that's my kind of real challenge now, is to work some jokes into a talk about software development, project management and world domination. That's my new tagline. So work some jokes into it and then make it more bearable for 45 minutes. Okay, so let's start for proper now. Let's start properly. The name of this show, this talk, is Delivering the Impossible. And it's had lots of different taglines, but now I think the tagline is a show about project management, software development and world domination. And we'll talk about why it's about world domination very shortly. The whole idea of this show is that if you look at things in the right way, if you take the right view on things, things become much easier. The astronomer and astrologist Sir Isaac Newton said, "If I have seen further, it's because I have stood on the shoulders of giants." My friend, he wrote this at the beginning, he put it as a quote at the beginning of his PhD. "If I have seen further, it's because I've looked through the right end of a telescope." And the main inspiration, the kind of thing that really got me started thinking about this show and the book that goes with it, is a quote from a software pioneer, the chap who invented object-oriented programming, Alan Kay. And Alan Kay said, "Point of view is worth 80 IQ points." Now that sounds really exciting, the idea that kind of, look, if only you can look at something in the right way, you can be 80 IQ points smarter. And for most of us, in fact for nearly everybody, an extra 80 IQ points is the difference between being a normal person and an absolute genius. But there's also a downside to this, which is that if you look at things in the wrong way, it can take 80 IQ points away. It can make you very, very dumb. So for example, you can have the fanciest camera in the world with the best lens in the world, the best telephoto lens, but if you leave the lens cap on, that's a point of view that is not going to make you smart. So this is kind of something that got me thinking, this idea of different points of view making a huge difference. And the points of view I'm talking about are managing projects, managing software development projects. Why should anybody care about managing software development projects? I'm going to have to get my umbrella because it's raining. Hang on one second. There we are, this is nice and intimate, isn't it? Why should anybody care about software development? Well, again, another inspiration for this talk and another inspiration for the book that's connected to it is a paper by a chap called Mark Andreessen, who was responsible for the first widely distributed web browser, Netscape. So if you don't know, if you've never heard of Netscape, if you've never heard of Netscape, that's a predecessor to web browsers like Chrome and Safari. And he now runs a company that invests in lots of other high-tech companies, lots of companies in Silicon Valley. And in 2010 he wrote a paper saying software is eating everything. What did he mean by software was eating everything? Well, so many aspects of our lives, software is now an enormous part of them. So for example, dating apps are eating romance and sex, depending which dating app you use. Apparently I've never used one. Netflix and Amazon are devouring television. If you want to order something to eat, you don't go down the takeaway anymore, you use Deliveroo. If you want to get a taxi, you don't hail one anymore, you use Uber. So many aspects of our lives are being devoured by software. And this is where the world domination part comes in. The people who know how to take their ideas and turn them into software and then release them into the world, those are the people who rule the world. People like Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. So that's why it's quite an important thing to be talking about right now. Why do you think you should listen to me? I'm talking about world domination, but I'm talking about it from under an umbrella in a rainy field. So maybe I'm not the best person to listen to. Well, there are some boring reasons why you should listen to me. I've been doing this for quite a long time. I've been doing this project management of software development since the late 90s. I've been involved in technology since the mid 90s. I've delivered software development projects for large companies, large stock market listed companies, for government departments, and for small organizations as well. So I've got a lot of experience of delivering software development projects. That's the boring reason why you should listen to me. The kind of interesting reason, I would argue, is that I have a relatively different take on this, because I think most of the stuff that you will read, most of the stuff that you will hear about project management gives the impression that if only you follow the right kind of methodologies, if only you're very careful in the right kind of way about what you do at different stages of a project, the project is guaranteed to succeed. And I think that's absolute rubbish, to be honest. I think the whole business of managing projects and delivering projects is a relatively emotional and irrational business, and all sorts of crazy stuff happens. And we'll talk later about the idea that like every project is a bet, but there isn't any guarantee of success. Lots of things can go wrong that mean a project doesn't succeed. So it is a kind of much more unpredictable, emotional, irrational business. And the things that I talk about, the ways of looking at projects that I talk about, I'm going to talk about some of them today, but if I again get an opportunity for a venue, I'm going to talk about them in a bigger venue and a longer show. These are ways of looking at projects that are kind of designed to preserve your sanity, reassure you that when things get difficult, that's in the nature of these things that they get difficult, and also to give you a better chance of success, to give you a chance of looking at things that in one way may seem impossible, and by looking at them in a different way, making them actually possible. So that's why me, why you, why should you be interested in listening to even a short talk about software development and project management and world domination? Well, I think it's a relatively easy thing to argue if you're involved in software development. I was really surprised last night at my show that there were so many people who in some way or other were involved in digital technology, software development, project management, and these were people who thought they'd come to another show, and I was having to give them a health warning that actually, no, sorry, this isn't a show about topical news events. This is a show about project management. So there are lots of people like that who are directly involved. Then you might be involved in a company, or you might be an employee inside a company that's waiting for a new piece of software, or you might be somebody who is funding a new piece of software. You really want that piece of software to happen, and I think it's worth you knowing about this, because there are aspects of managing software development projects, but also there are aspects of managing projects in general that a lot of people who haven't done it before aren't very familiar with. So people who actually write software or are involved in writing software, people who are in companies that are expecting or wanting software, both of those groups. But then I'm going to make a wider claim, which is everybody else. I think everybody else can learn something from what I'm talking about. And the reason for that is that a lot of what I'm talking about is it kind of fits with all kinds of creative endeavor. It's not just software development, all kinds of difficult, complex creative endeavor where you start off with an idea and then you have to do lots of things in order to deliver that idea as a real thing. All of those people, I think, can benefit from what I'm going to talk about. Now, in order to talk about looking at projects which are making new things in a successful way, I'm just going to take a step to the side and talk about how things are made, how products are made which already exist. So not new things, like things that exist and understood. And I'm going to talk about a company in Japan called Toyota Motor Company. Toyota Motor Company started making cars in the 30s, and they were originally a sewing machine manufacturing company, and they went to Indiana to see the Ford factory in Indiana and see Ford making Model Ts. And the factory in Indiana was a mass production factory. It made lots and lots of cars, and that was part of the economy of how they could make cars successful, was the economies of scale. And the people who went to the States from Japan, they realized that this wasn't going to work for them, because the Japanese economy at the time was much smaller, and it was extremely cyclical. So sometimes things were going well and people had money, and sometimes things weren't going so well and you couldn't sell anything. So from the 1930s, they started to develop a way of making cars that was in some ways radically different from the way that Ford made cars. And one of the ways that it was different was that it was very much focused on whatever the demand was. And people who've studied the way that Toyota do this have called this pull. That the way that they set up their factory, the way that they set up their production line, is so that it's focused on the people who actually want cars. Basically, every car that's made on the Toyota production line is to satisfy a specific order, or certainly that's in some of the accounts that I've read about it. So that's one important thing about the way that Toyota make cars. Another massive insight that Toyota had was that when you stop the production line, no value is being added to the car. When the production line is stopped, no value is being added to the car. And so in various different ways, they arranged things around that production line so that everything was in service of that production line. And what they realized was that every stage along this process of the production line, when people are adding things in, they're adding value. And if the production line isn't moving, then they're not adding value. And this led some of the commentators from the US who went over to talk to Toyota in the 80s, when the American car industry was in desperate trouble. They started to talk about this as a value stream. So So this is a process where value gradually gets added as something moves down a conveyor belt. It might be a real conveyor belt for a car, or it might be a virtual conveyor belt for other kinds of products. But crucially, at the end of this production line is somebody who actually wants that thing. So this is a value stream, and this is a production line for an existing product. And the reason I'm talking about this, value stream for an existing product, is to kind of set it in contrast to what's going on when you don't have an existing product. Because when you don't have an existing product, you have two value streams, but they're very different from that kind of value stream that you have for an existing product. One of those value streams is extremely weird, and the other one doesn't exist. Now, this introduction has taken longer than I thought it was going to do, and so what I'm going to do is in the next talk, which I'm going to do at 12:30, I'm going to pick up from where I left off, and I'm going to talk about positive ways of looking at projects which allow you. I'll talk about the weird value stream and the stream that doesn't exist, and then I'll move on to positive ways of looking at projects.